once you get finished trimming out a brisket completely, that's the flat right there, completely trimmed off, all right, both sides. So that is what a beef brisket flat looks like, no fat on it. And here's the point. Remember, we took care of that. This was the front of it. That's our point. I have a very large cut of meat here, and I chose this because I thought it would be a fun lesson in how to separate muscles, how to trim meat, and how to get it prepared. Now, before we get into trimming it and separating the muscles, I wanted to mention the grain of the meat and how we cut the meat to make it more tender. If you'll notice, the meat has lines running through it. These lines right here, they're running in this direction right here. You see them very distinctly. Okay, and that's one of the reasons I chose this cut, was this is very obvious in this cut. All right, so we have the grain of the meat running this way. So if I start on this corner and make cuts this way, the grain of the meat being long running through my beef jerky is going to make the beef jerky very difficult to bite through, very tough, very hard to chew, and it will be a much less pleasurable experience. If I cut my meat this way, directly across the grain, then the grain pieces in my beef jerky will be very, very short. And they will pull apart the same way this stuff pulls apart. See, it's already starting to. So it bites off easily when you bite it. And that is the idea of cutting the meat the right way. Now, before I trim any meat, I want to make sure that that meat or the knife is extremely sharp. So my knives are always kept very sharp, but sometimes blades get out of alignment. And that's the reason we do this. It's just to pull the blade back into alignment. And I have a video on sharpening knives and what this does to it and how and why. So check that out. All right. Now, how you start is your business, but I usually just go with the very first thing I see. So I've got a big old chunk of fat that I'm going to have to remove from this. Now, always be careful when you're cutting. If you notice the direction of cut, always do yourself the favor of cutting away from yourself. Try not to cut too deep, but some of these portions of fat are going to be really thick on a brisket. So this is part of fat that runs in between this muscle and this muscle. You have this muscle, which it controls direction of the leg from side to side, and this one controls direction of the leg from front to back. And this is the pectoral muscle of the cow. So when you look at the front of a cow, in between his front legs, you see two lobes hanging down. That's that right there, folks. That's what you're looking at, all right? Now right here, remove some of this outside that's sticking out. Now you can cut inward because that runs right in between those two muscles. So you see how I cut really deep on that and it didn't hurt a thing. All right, that's simple. Now if I lose a little bit of meat here and there like this, trust me, it's insignificant in this game, all right? So don't let that bother you. Don't lose any sleep on it, okay? And the thing of a brisket is just go at it. Don't be afraid of the thing. All right? Just grab the knife and go straight at it. So look at these huge clumps of fat that I've already removed. Very little meat on this piece here and none on the other. So what I have, this other muscle that converges right across here. All right, now, and it comes down a little bit low. It looks like right about there on this one. All right, but I need to get rid of all of this back fat so that I can see A, what I'm doing, and B, have it out of my way for doing this. Now sometimes if you have a knife like mine that is wide and it might be hard to get through the meat like what I'm doing there, then use a smaller knife. A boning knife like this can make this kind of work really easy. Actually, this is a utility knife, not a boning knife, but it works well much the same way, okay? A little bit of meat caught on that one. Okay, I want to avoid doing that too much. All right, looky there. Okay, it's very distinct. You see this layer of fat that runs right in between the flat and the point muscle, okay? So take that little knife and just run it along that fat line and watch it separate those two, okay? And remember, we're not butchers, we're chefs. So take your time at this. Don't get in a big rush about it. Don't get nervous or uneasy about it. Just go at it. And remember, sometimes you cut a little meat. It won't hurt it. By the way, if you've ever wanted to know how to separate your own muscles on a brisket, guess what? This video is teaching you how to do that. All right. Isn't that neat, the way that's coming apart? Okay, now right here, where these muscles join, so I need to come across there. Right here. There they are, folks. Your flat and your point right there. You have two separate cuts, and both being very, very viable and very good for this. So what I need to do is remove all this excessive fat from the point, which, by the way, is the fattiest part of the whole thing. The flat here, once it's cleaned up on this side, is usually very, very lean running up through the inside of it. So you have a good cut for that. But as you've seen, we're going to be removing a lot of fat here. There's plenty of it to go through. The first thing I want to do, just push him to the side. It doesn't matter which one of these you start with, just go at it. As I mentioned before, don't be afraid to cut into it some. Okay? And just follow the fat down the meat, trying to run your knife high so that you don't remove too much at any point. All right. This other stuff can also be trimmed down, cooked up for your dog, all right, if you have animals, or you can save it as stew meat. It'll work. You'll notice some of the meat has really, the grain is coming right apart on it. Not too much of a shock. Go. Before I go to the fat on the other side, and this is pretty well handled here, I did want to mention, notice the brown right here on this edge. What this is a result of is wet aging, okay? This is when it's set up in the package for a while and it's aged. And it's not a bad thing. It gives it some enzyme buildup in the meat that helps to tenderize it. Not a bad thing. You can remove that if you want. You can just slice it off if you feel that it's like the appearance of it is ugly or whatever. So if you'll notice, the split side on this still has its fat, all right? And that is, of course, because we haven't had a chance to get to this side yet. But on the flat, you have only one side as a general rule to trim. If you have to trim the top side of it, that's kind of unusual. It happens, but it rarely ever is there very much there to cut. All right, so keep that in mind. Now, if you'll notice when I go at this, that I always use a broad stroke, okay? And even if I cut into the meat just a little bit, I still do that. That long stroke really helps to give you a nice smooth look after it's said and done, like we have here. All right? If this is your very first time to do this, it may feel a little uncomfortable for you when you first start really cutting into something like this. Those large cuts of meat can seem intimidating when you first start working with them. I get it, all right? However, we get better with practice when we do things, okay? Please keep that in mind. Practice plenty, and you will get good at this. All right, there we have it right there. Once you get finished trimming out a brisket completely, that's the flat right there, completely trimmed off, all right, both sides. So that is what a beef brisket flat looks like, no fat on it. And here's the point. Remember, we took care of that. This was the front of it. That's our point. So we have our meat all together right there, and that's how much meat that your average brisket's going to yield. I wanted to speak to you for just a moment about my recipes. Now, I put out my recipes, okay? They're on my website. Now, I don't put out your average everyday recipe. I had somebody comment to me recently. He said, why would I do that when they're available everywhere for free? There's a little difference. Those that are for free, and I've printed them out, you have too, little tiny thing in the corner of the piece of paper that's covered with ads most of the time, and then it's not very descriptive. Not mine. Mine are worth having. Okay, so when you get one of mine, it's designed to be printed in such a way that it can be put into like a 3-ring binder. Look at this. Look at the quality on it. Look at how clear this is. The imagery is beautiful. So they can be printed, and this is the way I've designed mine, is so that it can be printed back to back. And then you end up with, a complete recipe that works in a book. And it comes out absolutely beautiful. Pictures that depict everything that you need to do in the recipe. Now, not all of them are exactly that way, but a lot of them are, and I'm getting more and more done this way. And I'm putting a hard push towards good quality recipes that give better instructions than everybody else's. And that's the reason I do them this way. These are designed to have holes punched in them. Let me pull this up. and do this with it. Look, 3-ring binder, boom, punch holes in it, you have it right there. Everything's all available for you, okay? So, pardon me, I didn't mean to hit the mic. Anyway, really cool idea, a great way to do your recipes. Instead of having to buy a book of 50 recipes to get 10, you just pay for the 10 recipes, save a whole lot of money, and you got a better idea for how to keep your recipes. Thanks for watching. Please enjoy what I provide. Check out Texas Cooking Today. There's a lot, I mean a lot of recipes there. And if you would, take a look in the description box down underneath me here, and you'll find the links to my website, to Texas Cooking Today, to the stuff that I do, and how to keep up with me and to find out a little bit more. Thank you very much. You have a good day.